Welcome to the Anxiety Coaches Podcast, a relaxing and informative show where we explore anxiety, panic, and PTSD, sharing how you can overcome them for life.
Aloha! Welcome back to the Anxiety Coaches Podcast. I'm your host and coach, Gina Ryan, and I am so happy to be with you again today as together we can consider the many ways to bring your mind and body back to its natural peace and calm. In today's episode, I'm talking about courage to change the things I can. And I wanted to talk about this because we all have the courage, and what we need to remember is to change the things we can versus everything. People with anxiety or very high stress levels are often trying to change everything and feeling like they are heavy with the responsibility to change everything, that they are the ones that need to be in control of everything. So getting clarity in our lives over what is and what is not within our control is super important. And as we continue our journey out of anxiety, out of the wormhole, towards a life of more peace and calm, having the courage to change the things we can and the things we can control, I will add on to that so that you know we're talking about what's within our circle of influence, where we have control. This is a good mantra to keep in mind. Courage to change the things we can, or the things I can. I have the courage to change the things I can. That can really be one that keeps us shored up, because sometimes we feel like we don't have the resources or the energy, but we do have the courage to move forward and change the things we can. And as the Serenity Prayer says, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It's all there, those three little segments. Serenity to accept the things you cannot change, those things that are outside your circle of influence, those things you have no control over. Have to learn to accept those. And that's a good thing. This is where surrender and acceptance are just beautiful. And the second piece is where we're talking about today, the courage. Pull up that courage to change the things that I can. And lastly, having that wisdom to know the difference. That's a big piece that takes a lot of practice, because we don't see that right off the bat. What's the difference? Where do I have control and where do I not have control? You know, you may be saying, I'm happy to have serenity and accept the things I can't change, but I don't know what they are. I feel like I have the need or the responsibility to change everything that is wrong. So this takes practice, and it takes awareness. It takes wanting to actually be clear in your life on where you have control. And we can see that there is much that really is outside of our control. But today, let's look at what we actually can change by looking at the things that are within our control. There's so many times that we are looking outside of ourselves and wanting to fix things, wanting to take care of other people and their attitudes, their behavior, their way they speak to us. And we're easy to see what we think other people should and should not be doing and where their corrections lie. But it gets really cloudy when we start looking at ourselves because we haven't spent a lot of time doing it. We haven't considered, where are my boundaries? Where do I end and the other person begins? Because to tell you the truth, you really can't change other people. Now, other people in your life may change, by what you do and what your actions and your behaviors and words are, but not by you forcing yourself on them, giving them advice, telling them what needs to be done, or actually even doing things for them. Those can really set us up to be in some pretty not healthy relationships with other people. So we want to take some caution there and always turn it back to, what do I control and where can I actually make a difference? And I have some ideas for you, but first I want to take a moment before we continue to thank today's sponsor, Ned. Think about the difference in attitude that you have around thinking about a routine versus having a ritual. I think you'll find, like I do, that having a ritual feels so much more meaningful. Whether using Ned's CBD, the stress blend, or the sleep blend, get present, slow down, and use this time as an opportunity to be mindful, to think positive and take a deep breath. I want you to smile and think about what you are grateful for. I enjoy taking Ned's Mellow Magnesium formula as a beautiful ritual and a peaceful way to end the day. We don't just jump into bed and expect to fall asleep. By getting present, being grateful, smiling, and enjoying the ritual of sipping on my Lavender Berry Mellow from Ned, I know that I have set myself up for a beautiful night's rest. Become the best version of yourself and get 15% off Ned products with code ACP. That's HELLONED.com/ACP to get 15% off. Thank you, Ned, for sponsoring the show and offering our listeners a natural remedy for some of life's most common health issues. So let's take a look at some of the things we can control. This is going to point those fingers right back at ourselves. The first thing I want to start with is how we react or respond to life, to everything that comes up. Our reactions are within our control. It doesn't feel like that in the beginning because we feel like it already happened. I already reacted. But what happens is we begin to actually move into more of a space in our lives where we are responding to life rather than reacting. That knee-jerk reaction is very common when we're anxious and high-stressed and don't feel like we even have a minute to think about anything. But that can all change with awareness, with mindfulness, and with the practices we talk about here. Another thing that we all control is the personal boundaries that we set and keep for ourselves. Boundaries are so important because without them, we do begin to forget where we end and the next person begins. And so we feel like their needs, their life, their problems are ours, and they're not. Of course, as loving beings, we are there to help people and be of service, but their issues do not need to be taken on as ours. And boundaries can help us to do this, and that we need to even remember to keep our boundaries once we set them. Now we can move into what you watch and listen to. That is something you can control. What do you feed yourself from the world of television, radio, the YouTube audios, podcasts? What are you feeding yourself? You control that. Now, of course, I know when I'm in an airport and they have CNN going on every screen that I walk by, that's different. And I try just not to pay attention to it. I have my own thoughts to think, and I have my own media that I find fills me and feeds me. So watch what you listen to and know that that is within your control, and feed yourself a good diet. Another place is how we speak to ourselves. And we can look at that as our self-talk. What are we saying to ourselves? Are we being kind to ourselves? Or are we only being nice to the people in our lives? Are we really taking care of everybody around us, and then inside ourselves, beating ourselves up for not being good enough. We want to be careful how we speak to ourselves. When we make a mistake, we can remember it in that way as a mistake, that we were learning something new. Now we know one more way not to do it. Even if we have done it wrong before and we did it again, we can say, okay, I see myself repeating this over and over. What's up with that? Maybe we need to take this kind of stuff to our journal so that we can see with our eyes the words that we are using on ourselves. How do you talk to yourself? Please be kind to yourself. It's a tough world out there, and you already have to listen to all kinds of maybe negative speech from others, but you don't have to give it to yourself. That you have within your own control. And very close to that is also how we speak to others. We want to be sure that even if people are off the rails and doing things we don't approve of, we can be mindful of how we speak to them and use words that maybe we would like to hear ourselves when we have made a mistake or gone off the rails. Another place that you have control is over your attitude. And this is one of the last things that can be taken from you, is your attitude. That comes totally from within, and you may be totally repressed, but you have an absolute control over how you think about that. What's your attitude? How are you going to take in and digest what is being done to you? You get to choose that. And there are many ways that we have attitudes that harm us, that we think we're victims, we think everything is happening to us. Well, we can change that attitude. We also could have an attitude of we deserve the best of everything and it should come to us easily. And life will knock you down from that, of course, and that hurts. Well, you can change that attitude. You can realize that life is ebb and flow. Things come in and things go out. Night follows day, and we can have a better attitude about everything that is happening, not only in our personal lives, but all the way out into the world at large. See where your attitudes are. And of course, that leads us to your actions are within your control. How are you acting in your life? Are you acting as the person that you truly are? Or are you so exhausted and so burned out that you don't even know? You're just running on empty, and your actions are showing that. We can be sure that we have control over our actions, but we need to remember that, right? We can't just go on living our life with the habits that we have learned. We want to be having our actions coming from our will and our consciousness, from our awareness. So pay attention. That's within your control. Maybe you can't control the actions of someone else, but you certainly can control your actions and your behaviors. Those go together because how you are behaving and acting in life is totally within your control. Again, you can't control other people's behaviors, or earlier how other people speak to you, other people how they set their boundaries, but you can control that within your own self, your behavior. What you eat is within your control. Whether you're eating a diet that is taking care of your body, if you are loving foods that love you back, that's going to set you up for a wonderful trip as far as your dietary habits go. Are you just eating again out of habit? Do you see how many things that we think are not within our control we are doing habitually? We're not doing them consciously or with awareness. So take some time and have some awareness around what you eat. That is within your control. And it's enough to take care of all these things that are within our own control. When we start doing this, we begin to see we don't have time to start taking care of the people who are around us. And last but not least, I guess I want to put a little word in here on social media. That is all within your control. First of all, whether you pick it up is within your control. Now, many of us have to do social media for part of our work. Maybe your job requires you to be holding a Twitter account or a Facebook account and having communication with people. But you can keep that into the little pigeonhole of work. When it comes down to your social life, it is totally within your control over who you follow on social media, who you unfollow on social media, what your actions and behaviors and attitudes are on social media. But I mention this because it's a big deal. There is so much that is out of your control on social media. And people want to control what other people are thinking on social media or the news or YouTube or whatever. But you can't. It is only who you are on social media, your actions, your behaviors, who you choose to follow and who you choose to not follow or read. It's your choice. This is totally within your control. So I would love to see you to pick one or two out of the control items I talked about and notice how you focus on what you can control makes you less apt to stray into the stressful or anxious thinking behaviors. When you focus on what you can control, it will keep you from feeling anxious and having those kinds of anxious behaviors around controlling what is not within your control. Look at all that is really within our control and the responsibility that we really have to ourselves to make the healthy changes that we can. And that helps us take the focus out of spending our time on the things that are out of our circle of influence and out of our control, spinning our wheels, making ourselves tired and anxious. Bring yourself back to the place where you can make a difference. I hope you have found some hope and actionable next steps that you can take, no matter how small, or that moves you in the direction of more peace and calm. That's it for today's episode. And before I read today's quote, I want to put out a personal invitation to those of you who would like to take your healing and your clearing of your anxiety panic to another level. If you are not someone who wants to join a group coaching program, you may be interested in joining in with me on coaching one-on-one. You can learn more about that at the website, anxietycoachespodcast.com, and go to the one-on-one coaching page. Feel free to send me an email, anxietycoachespodcast@gmail.com, with coaching in the subject, and I'll be sure to get back with you, and we'll take it from there. No need to have this drag on forever. And now for today's quote. The truth is that our finest moments are most likely to occur when we are feeling deeply uncomfortable, unhappy, or unfulfilled. For it is only in such moments propelled by our discomfort that we are likely to step out of our ruts and start searching for different ways or truer answers. And that's from M. Scott Peck. I'll be back in a few more days with another podcast. Until then, be well and aloha.
Thanks so much for joining us for today's episode of the Anxiety Coaches Podcast. Find more information at theanxietycoachespodcast.com.